Hey.
What's going
Oh,
on?
y'all look so
You do too.
cute. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my God. So I'm so glad to be here. Are y'all excited?
I'm
Yes.
super excited.
I am super, super excited. So, if you don't know us, we are Marsha's Plate podcast. We are a Black trans feminist podcast and we come out every week on Thursday, and we come to talk to y'all about some trans history in sci-fi, and discuss a little bit of themes about trans futures. And so, I brought my co-host. Who wants to introduce himself? My name is Diamond Stylz.
Ladies
You
first.
go first,
Oh,
Mia.
oh, I'm Mia Mix. I'm a co-host of Marsha's Plate.
I'm Z.
And so we're gonna jump right into conversation. We are kind of nerdy ourselves, so we love history, we love sci-fi, we are gamers, we are uh Mia wants to be a comic book writer. There's so many things that we that this conversation made us excited to come with, because it brings all of our little nerd stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to talk about is some of the gender bending or trans or anything that has to do with like flipping genders or trans themes that we have seen throughout sci-fi. And the earliest one that I can remember that we found was the Wizard of Oz. So everybody knows the story of Wizard of Oz, right?
Yes.
We know Dorothy, we know Scarecrow, Tin Man, and all that kind of stuff. Well, the author, which is L. Frank Baum, he actually did a sequel called The Marvelous Land of Oz. And in the sequel, Dorothy in the beginning got a house on another witch, and then she killed the wicked witch, and then they found out the wiz was fake. So what happened earlier than that, one of the children of Emerald City was actually sent to another wicked witch's house, and before she was sent, she was turned into a boy. And so the story about this character, his name is Tip. He is on this journey to find his way back to Emerald City. And so on this journey, just like Dorothy did, he picks up people like Jack Pumpkinhead and so many other different characters, just like Dorothy did. And they're finding their way back to Emerald City. And when they find their way back, Glinda looking at this person like, "Oh, you don't know the truth about your history. You actually are not a boy. You are actually a girl." She does her little magic and turns him back into Princess Ozma, who is actually the sovereign of of Oz, and she's able to take over it. And I was like, "Oh, this whole time, just like in the trans community, we call it assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth." And this whole time, this character was assigned a male at birth and didn't even know it, and came to be this whole princess and took over Emerald City. And I thought, for me, this was in 1906.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I thought this was one of the first times that I remember um, reading about a gender bending kind of storyline within science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I remember is there was this author. His name was Gregory Casparian, and this was actually one of the first times that I seen a lesbian couple depicted seriously. Like sometimes it would be depicted like in a kind of negative, demonic kind of way, but in a serious way. And this came in the 1900s, and it's called A Romance Forecast to the Future. And it's this first instance where they follow this journey of this couple, lesbian, and they are getting discriminated against when it comes to like their work and their life and all this kind of stuff. And they run across this scientist who, and remember, this is like in the early 1900s, when this came out, this is like in 1900 exactly. And sex changes and stuff didn't happen until the 1930s. But in this time period when this book came out, this theme would be sci-fi. They found a scientist that could do a sex change.
Right.
And changed one of the women who wanted to, one of the women into a man, and they were able to live their lives as a male and female couple, and they lived happily ever after. And you get what I'm saying? When we think about sci-fi, sci-fi kind of depicts the future or depicts some type of fantasy world in the beginning. And so when this person was writing this book, Gregory Castorian, that technology and that science didn't actually exist. We didn't have the first sex change until 1931. So in his mind, him imagining that a surgery could happen where somebody could change their sex was actually futuristic. But now
Yeah.
us in 2021, that's not futuristic at all.
Mhm.
So it's been a part of our culture for a long time.
That's
The
what they,
next one,
before you used
mhm,
to go, that's what they think trans men transition for, to get male privilege. That's what a
mhm,
lot of people think that, that's a misconception.
They think, are you
absolutely.
saying that they think that that's the only reason why
Yeah,
trans
they
men
think they
transition just to get privilege?
they think that we're trying to escape patriarchy by becoming men. That's what a lot of lesbian. I've heard lesbians say that.
Turkey.
Um, yeah. Um, religious people, like, that's what they think trans men transition for.
You don't think
I was actually
that
having a conversation. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was thinking you don't think that for some that could actually be true?
I think it could, but I still respect them. But um, I know that's not the case for me. And then well, no, I was about to change the subject. I was about to talk about the other thing, the Wizard of Oz. They didn't, basically, the person didn't experience dysphoria when you said somebody had to tell them you were this, which is also interesting.
Which is an
Yeah, and
actually
I,
unique perspective. Go ahead.
Yeah.
yeah, I think so too. And also, with the second story that you was talking about with the lesbian couple, I feel like an interesting detail was that it seemed like in order to live a happy life, that they had to conform to heteronormativity and the way that looks like in physically in order to be truly happy. So my question would be, did she get the sex change because of gender dysphoria, or was it getting a sex change in order to fit gender norms so that they could be live successfully? And like, I would really like to know how that ended. Like, were they happily ever after, or did she regret it?
That's what.
Well, they were happily ever after. What it was not about in at this time, transness was not this big thought out theoretical concept for us in the 1900s. This wasn't something that we actually they actually had thought about. And so in this particular story, I feel like they were just trying to tell the public that
What's that noise?
it sounds like it's Mia's. They were trying to tell the
No,
public
it's not.
that the best way to go was to be cis heteronormative. That's the best way you're gonna fix your gayness if one of y'all was a man and one of y'all was a woman.
Right. A lot of people don't know this either. They don't know that trans men's sexual reassignment surgery came about due to cis men being at war, and if they just so happen to lose their penis, that was the way they were able to develop it.
Right. That's the origin stories. It's always that's patriarchy right there. Like we gotta find surgeries that fix the men.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So the next story that I kind of want to point out is and this goes along with them just trying to sell a narrative about what is normal and what is not normal. There was kind of like a classic battle of the sexes story that was that came out in by this author named Thorne Smith, and it was called Turnabout, and it came out in 1931. And it's basically this married couple find this idol. They find this this statue that has magical powers, and it's kind of actually not really, it's magical, but it's like a trickster. And so it switches the wife and the husband, it switches them in each other's body, and it's a comedy. And they are going through all of these different they're going through all of these different like gender norms in like this comical way, like being really, really exaggerated because the woman is in the man's body and the man is in the woman's body. And the whole point of the comedy is how ridiculous some of the norms are. And it was a really cool, interesting way for for this person who was a comedy writer to really put something out there that was kind of different in 1930s. Now this was more closer to the time that we start seeing sex change happen. This actually was the year this came out is the year that the first sex change happened. And it actually inspired the last episode of Star Trek, Turnabout Intruder, where Captain Kirk, the original Star Trek, where Captain Kirk had his body taken over by a woman, and he took over her body. It
Hmm.
was kind of interesting in regards to that.
Yeah, there's a I read about a comic called Starhawk.
Hmm.
Apparently him and his adoptive sister share the same body. Like they'll change and just living life, and then they'll switch over. So similar.
You know, you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me another science fiction like god, Octavia Butler. Octavia Butler had a book called Wild Seed,
Hmm.
and two of the main characters was Doro and Awanyu, and their abilities. One of their abilities is to take over people's bodies, to look like other people, and in different part of the book, there was like we meet them on the continent of Africa. One of them in the 1600s. One of them is from Egypt, and one of them is Igbo, and we meet them at different times because they live for a long period. You remember like um Interview with a Vampire, where you meet them at different times you see them at different times of the century or whatever. And they were able to do that. And one of them, the boyish character, he could sense he could sense when she was around, unless she transformed herself into a animal. He can't sense her when she's an animal. Do you see what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
he looked at her as a like almost like as a threat. But then when he found her again later on in the story, she was actually running her own like kind of, not plantation, but that's the best word I can come up with. Um, where she learned it from him, but he did it like in an ugly way, where he was killing people and forcing people to do what he want, and they were all producing children, and she was doing hers in a more humane way. And when he saw her doing hers in a more humane way, it kind of made he just kind of reminisced on their connection, even though he came to kill her. And so it was interesting because each one of them were navigating the world in different genders, and they will be having conceiving babies as one gender, conceiving babies as the other gender, and it just was 1 minute one is a boy, 1 minute one is a girl, and it just was going back and forth. And this was a part of their superpower, and the author was Octavia Butler. It was quite
Dang.
interesting because it was speak to like patriarchal themes.
Hmm. Uh-oh. We lost Mia.
She'll come back
um,
in.
I remember, I haven't been like a big book reader on that type of stuff, on gender bending, but I remember a prominent one being Mulan for me. That's one of
Hmm.
the ones that really stuck
From
out to me.
Disney.
Yeah, when I was growing up, that was one. I was like, that's interesting. And then the song was like, like, why is my reflection, reflect who I am and stuff. I remember seeing
It's interesting how Disney does that. Disney, I didn't relate to Milan because I don't know. I wasn't assigned female at birth, but
yeah,
I did relate to like Little Mermaid wanting to be something more
yeah,
than what she was and going to land and all that kind of stuff. But I could see how you would relate to Milan more.
yeah. Also, I remember there being a moment in Aladdin when the genie was, I don't know if he, what was he in drag? Do you remember that? He was in drags or he
Yes.
changed to one of them. And then I know this isn't really gender bending, but I remember Chris Tucker, fucking character in
Fifth Element.
Fifth Element. That was funny
Yes,
to me when I
but
was
he was
13.
straight though. What's crazy is
Exactly.
in that story, he was straight. He was
Yeah.
that was almost just more of a advancement in feminizing in his gender expression.
Right, right. It ain't really changing sex, but I remember that sticking out to young queer me like, it's
Hmm.
interesting. Right. Um, does the Matrix count? Like when they was take people bodies and shit? Like,
I
like
could see that. I didn't really. Well, we know that the people who created one of the creators of the Matrix is trans, and so they have admitted to there being a lot of trans themes throughout the Matrix. So I get it.
yeah,
It makes sense.
yeah, because the
Another
aliens was. Mhm,
recently we saw on Lovecraft Country the two spirit character that
mhm,
his father killed because he didn't want them to release their secrets. And
mhm,
so I think a lot of the Native American trans folks that we know really had a problem with that character being killed. Um,
mhm,
this is one of the first in a long time, one of the first two spirit characters that was
mhm,
depicted on television. And this is this smash Lovecraft Country is this smash hit of a show. And here we go. They show a two spirit person and y'all slit their throat.
mhm,
And so native people, the people that we know, really had a problem with that. And I was thinking, what is more important to y'all, realism or idealism when they are depicting the future of trans people in shows? Like we think about like Pose, and we think about that's not the future, but I hear a lot of clashes how sometimes Pose is unrealistic and then sometimes it's idealistic, where it's like we want to show you a different way of being. When it comes to trans depiction in sci-fi or in future movies about us, what is more important to you, realism or idealism?
mhm. Oh, that's hard. I like the balance that Pose did though. They let them dream. Of course there's a lot of trauma, but they let them live out their dreams too. So I like that balance of it. But I can see you being over it if it like constantly just them getting murdered, like just us getting murdered. I would hate that.
Mm, yeah, because I feel like once, are you back, Mia?
I can't see myself, but I think I am.
Yeah,
We
we
can
can
see
hear
you, can't
you.
hear you.
We can hear a lot
Oh,
of
okay. Okay. Well,
crackling.
awesome. As long as you can see me, I can't see anything. So, yeah, I'm back. Thank you guys, for your patience. I was having a little technical difficulties, but I do. Can I chime in since I was
Yeah.
having some issues?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like everything's clear now, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I was so over it when they killed the two spirit person on Lovecraft and Country. I just because I was just like this when you it was beautiful to see the representation when I seen it and I'm like, oh my gosh, where are we gonna go with this? And then they killed her. And when I thought about it, I was like, okay, trans people are have always been our lives have always been less of value to society. And so, well, not always, because culturally we have been uplifted in different ways when you think about two spirited people. And different cultures. But when I think about Americanized culture and how we're conditioned, how they're conditioned, I should say, we just it feels like we have had like a harder time. So seeing that, I was like, okay, I understand that, like symbolically, why she was murdered. But it would have been beautiful to see that character unfold or see that character have some power.
Or
But
see
I
her
mean,
come
there
back to
was some
life.
realism in it also,
Like, what if
as
she
far
came
as
back to
like
life?
the way society is now.
Later on, where would she
But
come back to life at though?
I don't know. It would have just been cool to see. I don't know.
if she came back to life, and I
Like
can't hear
as a
Z, I'm
spirit,
sorry,
like
at
an
all.
actual spirit or something, or we could see her as a spirit. I don't know. Like a spirit version. That would have been dope.
I don't know. I sometimes I like you said I want it to be balanced. I want it to be where we are depicting the real life stuff, but I also feel like it needs to have some of the idealism. We need to show examples of, you know, where what kind of advancements that we can bring to the table when it comes to um just the world, because I think we bring something to the world that is unique, and we dismantle binary beliefs. And if you can shake up gender, which is historically one of the the juggernauts and ancient social structures. If you can shake that up, you can shake anything up. So think about when we if we're trying to dismantle the gender binary, this white supremacy thing is a piece of cake, because that's relatively new compared to the gender binary thing. So I think when we talk about trans futures, it make me feel like there's so much potential for us to show where we could go, what it could. That's really good. But if I talk about it, if I really want to be honest, based on what we are seeing in the real world, it feels like there will be no trans futures. Like, it feels like, let me give you a perfect example. So when we think about like people with Down syndrome, when science has gotten to the point where they can figure out in the womb who is more likely to come out Down syndrome. And in Iceland, like, it's a 90% rate, 98% rate of no Down syndrome babies being born at all. And so they almost have eradicated, not even 100, it's not at 100% yet, but because sometimes the test isn't 100% accurate, and sometimes people are just born that way. But most people, when they learn that their child has Down syndrome, they once that they learn that once they learn that their child has Down syndrome, they abort it. You feel what I'm saying? And so
Hmm.
that means no babies are being born. What we are coming to do, what we're coming in with scientists now, we're learning that there's some biological stuff that can show that we are trans early on. And if that happens, I fear that what's happening to people with Down syndrome would happen to us. Like, science is getting to that point. That's what the future is looking like. And so, or they'll start fixing us before we even come out. And so transness almost wouldn't exist. So when we think about future, I feel like we would start to be eradicated in the same way that like Down syndrome kids are. What do y'all think about that?
Well, like I was saying when we talked about before, I don't think transness is something that needs to be fixed. Um, and if you do think it needs to be fixed, then I feel like it's a form of eugenics to me. Because eugenics, by definition, is, well, I don't have the straight up definition, but basically trying to hold up a specific type of person, like a specific type of group, a specific type of whatever it is, like us, like different groups, like try to leave out a certain group too. So I don't know. I feel like if you think, I feel like I was born this way. So if you feel like I shouldn't exist, to me, it's a form of like trying to get rid of me. And also, you rather, if you do that, to me, it seems like you would rather take the easy route. You rather try not to dismantle society's outlook on transness and help to make it a better world for us, a more safer world. It would be a quick fix to be like, oh, just get rid of it because I don't want to, like just basically dehumanize in a way.
But what if it's not necessarily I'm trying to get rid of trans people? What if it's I don't, honey, we hear out here that the trans life is so hard, and people are dying, being murdered, and da 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 da, and the difficulties of the trans life. What if, as the parent, they're just choosing a better life for their child? And now I'm not talking about the aborting part. I'm talking about more of like if they could fix it in the womb, like if they can send some type of gender incongruency, and then they could fix it in the womb. Since we're talking about sci-fi, science fiction, what they could possibly do in the future, if they could fix it in the womb, I think from a parent's perspective, they might be trying to fix to stop it from their child from having, just like if they could fix that, like with the CRISPR, the CRISPR kind of technology, just like they can fix their child from having diseases or having whatever, they could fix that incongruency and avoid their child having those transgender problems. I don't think it's necessarily like almost evil. They just we it's just them choosing a better life for their child. Is Do you think that that's negative, or do you think that that's positive?
Transness is not a disease to me, so it's hard for me to be comfortable with that thought. Like, I don't know. It's just hard for me. I'm very pro-choice, but like some stuff I think is way too far. Like, there's a line that needs to be drawn because the ethics of the situation to me is just I don't like it. I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm. Absolutely. So I actually wanted to bring some stuff up. There is a question somebody had: is Mulan considered trans by the community? So no, Mulan is not considered trans, but basically her going to fight for her father and living as a boy, there's a trans theme there, and even in some of the songs like Reflection, the lyrics really resonate with trans people. um who is that girl I see staring back at me? How when will my reflection show? The whole theme, who I am inside. Yeah, the whole, it's like a very trans theme. But it's not necessarily Mulan is trans. No, we don't think of her as trans. Um, but yes, another recent thing that I wanted to talk about was Black Mirror. I'm glad that you brought that up. Black Mirror has an episode called Striking Vipers, and in that episode, it really, to me, it really is talking about sexuality, but because one of the characters, Yaya, I can't remember his last name, but he's just fine as hell. He When he goes into the game, he actually goes into the game as a female character, which gives it which gives him an experience when we're thinking about just being in a body that is not something in what you're used to. In When he gets into the girl's body, they even have a conversation about how is the sexual experience different. And she was like, and he in her body was like, it's like a symphony instead of like a solo. And so yes, that, although we know that these two characters are going these are two male characters, going into the game and simulating sex, but one of them is taking over a female character's body. And so that gives another, where it's not necessarily trans, but it is a trans theme being being mentally one thing and then physically another, and having that kind of experience. And so I thought it was quite interesting to me when we think about science fiction, because Black Mirror, that episode particularly was talking about science fiction in that kind of full body experience when it comes to gaming, and how you, when you get into that world, in that science fiction world, what is, you know, what is gender then? What is sexuality then? Because you're not actually acting on it. And when you come out, you're not a woman anymore. And then what does it say about a person who continues to choose to be that female character? You get what I'm saying? All that kind of stuff. If you had that kind of choice. So I think it's quite interesting. He only chooses to play the game as a woman. Like, it's different if he chose to, you get what I'm saying, to play the game as something else. He only chooses to be that girl. And so what does that say about him? What does that say about, how he feels? It might have started off as, "Ooh, this is my favorite character," because in the beginning of the episode, in the beginning of the episode, he always chooses that character. And anybody who's a gamer know you have your favorite player, and you have your favorite type of player. And so, I would always pick Chung Lee. I would always pick Orchid when we were playing Killer Instincts. So, it was certain things that we would always pick. And so when he started off, it may have felt like that. But once you see what type of game this is, how do you get to the point where you're comfortable, like, in that kind of way? And what does that say about your gender, and you questioning gender, or you know it makes me,
Hmm.
it's quite interesting to think of it in that position.
Yeah, I always, every time since I was little, I've been putting like the.
May I say something? I I I I thought that it was interesting, but because when you say questioning your gender, Diamond, what I thought was interesting was they tried it, and they tried to see if what they were experiencing in the game was actually what they were experiencing outside of the game. So you remember when they came together, because inside the game they would kiss and they would have romance, but outside they're like, okay, you know what? Let's see if this is actually real. And they met up, and they were like, no, this isn't this isn't for me. So that was interesting to see that they were able to play with their, no, excuse me, they were able to explore their sexuality in a game, because I feel like that's what they were doing. And how how it looked on the outside, like, for to see like a black man do that, it was beautiful.
Yeah, I was I was saying when I was young, I used to always put myself as the guy version of myself, like in video games. So I could see they was trying to take it to the next level, because I'm sure they were aware of people that do that all the time. They always make themselves a different gender, and then for you to actually be able to be in a game like that and do it, took it to the next level. Like, interesting.
Another story that I thought was quite interesting was Splice. So there was, anybody who don't know about Splice. Splice is a movie about two scientists trying to create this entity, and they have backing, and it just keeps, they're trying to they're trying to mix all of these different genes to make this entity, and it keeps not working. They keep killing each other. Each entity that they make, they keep killing each other. They're trying to get them to mate and all this kind of stuff. But once one thing they do, eventually something starts to work. But by the time they get to that point, the funders kind of throw the money out of this, and say, no, we don't want to fund this no more. This is not working. Wrap it up. But they had already created this little entity, this little, not, it's not an alien, because it's just a bunch of DNA mixed. It's just a bunch of DNA mixed up. And so, but un, unbeknownst to one of them, when they were supposed to destroy the entity, one of them say no, they don't destroy it, and they take it to this farm and raise it. And so in the process of them raising it, the thing grows up to look like uh it doesn't it looks like this alien girl. You think it's a girl, and him one of the it's a man and woman scientist, and they're in a relationship, and as soon as their relationship get on rocky road, the dude in the relationship starts having affection for the alien thing that looks like a girl. Her name is Dren, of classic nigga shit.
But wait, Diamond. I think it's important to mention that the attraction also came from him actually seeing his partner in her, because she used her eggs or whatever. She used her DNA in order to create him, Dren. So I think that also was another part to play in the attraction.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then so they end up having sex. And when she gets older, when Dren gets older, Dren is the alien. When Dren gets older, she goes through this puberty stage. And when you trying to go through your puberty stage, if you're an animal, things can get real territorial. And so she's getting real territorial with the mama, like the human girl. And so at one point she actually threatens her, and she has this stinger on
Tail.
that's connected to her spine. It's like her tail. It's
Yeah.
connected to her spine, and she has this stinger, and almost threatened her, like threatened to harm her with the stinger. And so the mama bear, the human mama, she actually said, "Oh no, baby, wrong girl. You now that I see that you a threat with this little stinger, oh, we about to get rid of that." So she literally ties her down and removes her stinger. And so that devastates her, little teenage. I think of her as a teenager at this point. That devastates her. But the daddy, the boy, feels all sorry, and because they were going through their problems, he ended up having sex with her. And so that leads to even more problems. He ends up the alien ends up when he has sex with her, she ends up going into a metamorphosis where she actually turns from a girl entity into a boy entity, and is aggressive and crazy. And the boy entity end up raping the mother, end up you get him raping the female scientist, and turned into this whole aggressive monster type of deal. And so what was it's science fiction, but because they added all these animals, well, we know because we are trans and we don't look into weird shit like that. We found, we know amphibians that switch genders. We know
There's trees
different
that
type
do
of
it. Yeah.
fish.
There's
Hmm?
a certain tree that does it too. I can't remember the name. There's a tree that.
Trees
Yeah.
and koi fish. When we think about like the clownfish, when they're in the wild, they are a female ran a monarchy, so they ran by a leader female, and when that female is either eaten or dies, it goes like this in the hierarchy of power. It's female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male. When that female dies, the male that's second in line turns into a girl, and the chain goes up. That's what happens in nature. And so them mixing all them genes, of course, just for the sake of the story, that's gonna be the gene that happens in this crazy alien thing. So they end up killing it, and I just thought that that was a quite interesting thing of them playing with her gender in that kind of way. Um, and it was an interesting story, and I thought that it was interesting gender bending sci-fi moment. Let me see. One of the last things that I wanted to talk about is, where do you see, and we got like 5 minutes. where do you see the story going? Now we talked about, trans kind of almost potentially getting extinct if science goes in the direction where we can avoid. But if not, if it doesn't go in that direction as slowly, where do you think trans in science fiction, what would you want to see, and what do you think, where do you think it's gonna go?
Hmm. I feel like they would try more lightly for some reason. I feel like they wouldn't, like, you know how they kind of do, like even things like when I watch SpongeBob and shit, like they would play around with their gender and do different shit, and even Bugs Bunny was playing with gender. I feel like they would kind of put a halt to a lot of that stuff unless they were talking about a trans character specifically, because they know that we're sensitive about, like we calling shit out if we don't like it. So I feel like it would definitely be more it would definitely be as politically correct as possible, which I don't really have a
Yeah.
problem with.
Yeah, I want you to get your shit together. I want
Yeah.
better stories. I don't want no more Buffalo Bill. Like, you remember when they it used to be a theme we learned in Disclosure, uh and I'm old, so I know a lot of the older movies. It used to be just a theme that we were either harming people or
Oh
serial killers, like in Silence of the Lamb. I just want us to I don't know, I want it to be, I want gender in science fiction to be more mutable. I want to see more options. Like, I want to see humans making options of gender instead of it being so fixed. Like, I am
yeah.
born this way. I actually
Hmm.
want I want to see some depictions where, if we keep moving in the culture where we're trying to break down the gender binary, where it is not as fixed just by biology. It would be cool for people to be able to choose what gender they are, because that will really shake up the powers of patriarchy and powers of men, women, blah, 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 blah. It will shake it up, because if anybody could choose their gender, the power dynamic would be different. Nobody would be invested because anybody could switch. Oh, the men have the power, I could switch to that. To
Yeah.
me, in my mind, I could see them doing that and making it. But it also could turn out to be ugly, like in India. Remember, now in India, the culture made it feel, is leaning towards not having any girls, because girls are more of an expense, because you got to pay when she gets married. So people are avoiding having girls, getting them aborted and that kind of stuff. And now there's this surplus of men over there. So if everybody had to could choose back and forth, I think that it would be a surplus of one of the genders. I think it would be a surplus of men, and people would only switch to girls to procreate, to continue the race. But because men are stronger, because men are in regards to physically, and because they have the power right now, I think in the future that they would try, people, if the choice could be made, I feel like more people would choose that side. Not
Yeah.
me.
I would probably choose, like, to have a character. Well, I would choose to be a trans man, of course, but like if I was doing a character, I would probably would like to see an intersex character and see how that is. I think that'd be interesting.
Mm. So, everyone, make sure you go to the main floor and support the vendors after we close out. We are so happy to be here, so happy to be invited. You can listen to us on all podcast platforms. Just search Marsha's Plate, and we will be there. We talk about everything. We have an episode every single Thursday. You can find me at Diamond Styles on all platforms. Z, where can they find you?
You can find me at ZAHIRRAYE on any platform. Is that here
And Mia,
written?
where can they find you? Is
She
Mia
quiet.
frozen?
I think she is.
she is she is the Mia Michelle on Instagram. And yeah, we had a great time. I hope y'all learned something, and it sparked different conversations for you, and different themes that you can bring up on your own platform about transness.
All right, y'all.
All right, y'all.
Peace out.
Bye.